If you want to win your fantasy league, you have to hit on the right wide receivers, the guys who could break fantasy. But here's the thing, most people are focused on last year's breakout, whether they realize it or not. Meanwhile, the 6 wide receivers in this video are flying a bit under the radar, but have the opportunity to break out and be league winners. And we can kick things off for a guy who was drafted as a second-round pick, expected to break out last year, and that's exactly what he did in Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons, and he did it especially down the stretch, like very quietly with his rookie quarterback the final month or so of the season, Michael Penix. Drake London went off. But before we get into those splits, and they are very powerful, specifically, I mean, let's just look at what Drake London did. In his first year, he had Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. He had Zach Robinson, a new offensive coordinator. He ranked 3rd overall in targets. The guy was able to stay unbelievably healthy, earning a 29% target share. You could see that was 6th best in the NFL. I mean, you can look through every single stat. He hit 100 plus receptions. I'm looking here, over 1,200 yards. That was top 5 in the league. He was one of the best wide receivers down in and down out. He also ranked top 10 in efficiency, yards per route run, and what's even more impressive is how it happened, his role. Because despite ranking just 20th overall in total routes run, running 30.5 routes per game, because there was a lot of games where the Falcons didn't throw a lot, especially earlier in the year when Kirk Cousins was not super mobile. You can see right here the slot usage, 391 slot snaps, 38% of the time, 13th most in the NFL, and this directly correlated with new offensive coordinator Zach Robinson coming in. He mentioned in the offseason how Drake London would be used more in the slot, and we saw that when he was in the slot, he was a top 5 slot receiver in the league. But it's not like he was just some chain mover out of the slot. He was a plus body who could also win downfield. He was very explosive, and we saw that hit like new heights the final month of the season with his new quarterback, Michael Penix. If we look at the RotoViz game splits tool, you can see right here, over those final 3 games of the year when Michael Penix was the starter, Drake London was averaging 23 fantasy points per game. Insane. During that stretch, he was the number 1 wide receiver. 13 targets per game. Number 1, led the entire NFL during that span. 117 yards per game was also first. He had 6 catches of 20 plus yards. That led the league. He was the best wide receiver in the NFL with Michael Penix. Small 3-game sample, but it gives you something to look at. And if we wanted to have some fun and look at what these numbers would look like over 17 games with Michael Penix, you're looking at 221 targets, 125 receptions, and 1,995 receiving yards. Obviously unlikely, but just that's the pace he was on. Now, heading into 2025, we get this alpha-sized wide receiver 1 who was a early second-round pick in drafts. I took him there often last year. We encouraged a lot of people to. It ended up paying off. He's in the prime of his career right now. You can see he's not even 24 years old. Will be 24 around the time the season starts. And now he gets a full off season to build chemistry with Michael Penix, another full off season with his offensive coordinator and coaching staff as well in Atlanta, on a team that's probably returning a top 10 offensive line. They lost Drew Dalman, a very strong center, but in general, still a strong team with a strong run game that's going to have everything they need to succeed when it comes to passing, especially on play action. And if we look at the competition, it's all the same. Like it's completely the same, and it makes sense. They have Drake London, a young wide receiver on his rookie deal. They have Darnell Mooney, who they signed last year, and he was productive, right? If you look at it, there's like some rumors that Kyle Pitts could be traded away. Overall, though, same competition. Kyle Pitts, who's not threatening. Darnell Mooney, who I do think is another player who's being slept on in fantasy based on where he's currently going. We'll talk about him more later on in the summer, I'm sure. But as of right now, like, this is your competition. If you look at the offseason changes, you added nobody on offense, just 2 tight ends. Felipe Franks, a former quarterback as well, right? You're looking at who you lost. Rondell Moore, okay. Drew Dalman was by far the biggest loss. And in the NFL draft, their only offensive piece they took was a 7th-round tackle. So, like, it's kind of rinse and repeat. Same coaching staff as last year, same core of players, just no Kirk Cousins to start the year. Probably an upgrade in Michael Penix now at this stage in Cousins' career, and the same competition for Drake London. I mean, London checks every box. He has NFL size, contested catchability, a red zone role, volume, and now big play upside with his quarterback in Penix. And he's not going to sneak by anybody. He was taken in the 2nd round last year, and he paid off that value. He's going as the wide receiver 9, but he's still going 17th overall. Like, this is kind of where he went last year in drafts. 15th, 16th, 17th overall, despite just producing top 5 numbers across the board in terms of production in the NFL. Now, in my opinion, getting another year in the system, getting a better quarterback upgrade with no increased competition. Like, you just saw him pay this off last year, and now arguably a better situation. I'm in again. Because if you're looking for a wide receiver who can command touchdowns, 10 plus targets, and probably have the range of outcomes as the number 1 overall receiver in fantasy in the late 2nd round, it's London. Now, another guy I firmly believe could be a league winner, and when we get into where this guy is currently going in drafts, it's crazy, but Tech McMillan, the rookie wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, he's not just a 1st-round rookie wide receiver. He's a 1st-round rookie wide receiver stepping into a clear role with top 10 draft capital. And this is a dude who all he did in college was produce over the last 2 years. 1,400 yards on a 28% target share, according to Player Profiler. 1,300 yards last year, despite not being healthy. We'll get into that in a second, on an elite 31% target share. If you're not familiar, a target share is how many of your team's targets percentage-wise you accounted for. 31% of your team's targets is elite territory. Anything above like 24% is good to great. 30 plus is elite. And 2023 was the year that got him on the map. 1,400 yards was top 5 in college football. 90 receptions is highly impressive. He backed that up last year in 2024, despite not being healthy. NFL.com, this is a scouting report right here. They mentioned that an AFC scouting director, they didn't say which team, that's the whole point of being anonymous, he said, McMillan got hurt in the spring, and I don't think we ever made it back to being 100% with him, is basically what that said. The 2023 tape gives you a better idea of who the type of player he is. So let's just keep this in mind. 2023's tape was awesome. 2024, there's a little bit of a concern with separation against man coverage for some people, but now we know he was hurt the entire season if he got hurt in the spring, and he still put up 1,300 yards, 84 catches on a 31% target share in one less game played than his great 2023 season. So I'm not concerned at all about the film. We have a reason for that. If it dropped even a little bit, it was because of not being 100% the whole year, and he played through it, which helps your fantasy team. When he gets banged up, he'll play through it. He won't go whining to the bench. And by the way, if you actually dig into the advanced stats that Matt Harmon on Reception Perception does, he charts all these wide receivers, their win rates. He's fantastic. He's a colleague of mine from Yahoo when we do some shows together. Against zone coverage, 81% win rate. That's great. 73% against press. That's awesome. Man coverage dropped to 70%. That's still a strong number for sure. It's borderline being like a highly productive wide receiver moving forward. Once you hit around that 75, definitely 80% range. But we already have the context that if it's slightly below what you wanted, probably because he was hurt. And now he lands on the Carolina Panthers. As you can see, the team changes page right here in our fantasy blueprint, which by the way is currently right now available. If you want to go out and get it, you can check it out. Join the thousands of people currently using it to help them win their league. That's the whole goal, is to win your league. Smack around your friends. You can check it out. There's a link in the description below to the blueprint. But this is what you're seeing. He went in the first round. Okay, the other wide receiver they took, who's kind of a sneaky option, 6th round, Jimmy Horn out of Colorado, played with Travis Hunter, right? Played with Shedeur Sanders. But if we scroll over here, Hunter Renfrow, a veteran wide receiver, I think kind of just brought in as a locker room guy. He was arguably like already retired by the time he joined this team later on into free agency after the draft. So you're looking at a competition right now of this. You're looking at Xavier Legette, first round pick they traded up for last year, clearly raw, nowhere near the same talent as McMillan. McMillan is the priority over him. Adam Thielen, 35, continues to be productive out of the slot. Bryce Young has shown for multiple years that he trusts him, but again, 35-year-old receiver, probably not winning downfield. Jalen Colker, as a late round rookie last year, showed that he actually has some upside, and this is a guy that probably is going to get on the field. Wouldn't be shocked if he starts playing more over Legette, who was not able to prove that he could be healthy last year. We'll see what happens in year 2. Other than that, though, like, who knows if any of these guys are on the team? Hunter Renfrow, Jan Chisnan, David Moore. You could see I kind of just glossed over quickly Chizena or whatever his last name is because I just don't know the last name. I'm sorry. He's been on a bunch of teams. I used to play him in the preseason a lot. I just don't know the last name. Shoot. The other thing that McMillan has going for him, other than the great draft capital, is like this is quietly a pretty good situation. He lands on a team where Bryce Young was, despite a bad rookie year, started to trend up last season. This is a situation where Bryce Young got the new coach in Dave Canales, who revived Geno Smith, revived Baker Mayfield, got Baker a $100 million contract. Geno comeback player of the year a couple of years ago. And it didn't look good to start last year, but then it got pretty smooth and Bryce Young looked good. And now Bryce Young gets a wide receiver one. Like last year, he had no verticality to this offense. Nobody he can trust on third down to move the chains. He gets that now in McMillan, a true X receiver, 6'4", can win at all levels of the field, can win contested catches and in the red zone. I mentioned Dave Canales. He's still there, the head coach who worked not just, just 2 years ago with Mike Evans, who McMillan draws a lot of comparisons to. Also worked with Chris Godwin out of the slot. So did Brad Idzik, who's their offensive coordinator now for a second year, came over from Tampa with Dave Canales, and we've already kind of seen some hints at this, and I will not be shocked if by the time OTAs come around in June and obviously the preseason, if we start to see McMillan move into the slot a lot, because we saw that in college, he had success there, and Dave Canales has a history of doing that with his wide receivers. So even though Adam Thielen is on this team as like a slot wide receiver, I would not be shocked. Again, Thielen, 35 years old, kind of just on this team. They had some negotiations to get him back on the team. I would not be shocked if for 40% of the time this year, McMillan's lining up out of the slot, maybe Legette and Coker on the outside, and Thielen's just not all that involved, or maybe Thielen just runs some routes on the outside just to get McMillan matchup advantage in the slot. This is a guy that I want on a lot of my teams in Tet McMillan, and especially where he goes right now. McMillan is currently going as the wide receiver 28 in drafts, 55th overall. So he's currently going as a 5th, 6th round pick. I think that's great. If you're talking about league winners in those middle rounds at the wide receiver position, there's few guys who look as good as Tet McMillan, a clear alpha in an ascending offense, solid offensive line, and he himself can produce. Now, a quick reminder, if you want to get a real edge in your fantasy football league this year, I'm giving away my free 5-day email course that's centered all around avoiding the biggest mistakes I see every year in fantasy. Thousands of people have already grabbed it, so you can too. It's these 5 mistakes right here. I spend about 20 to 25 hours just writing up basically for each email you get. We'll cover these 5 mistakes over 5 days, completely free for right now, so you can check it out. It's linked down below, or you can just go to startwinningfantasyfootball.com. That's startwinningfantasyfootball.com to get your free 5-day email course. There's also a QR code on the screen. All right, now let's head over to one of the most underrated wide receivers receivers in fantasy football for, I don't know, the past 3 to 4 plus years. And honestly, he might be entering the best situation of his career right now in Jakobi Meyers. Let's look at this for a second. In 2024, he earned 129 targets, over 1,000 receiving yards, and was a top 24 wide receiver in points per game. Not only that, but on a career high 129 targets, you can check out this tweet right here from ML Football. On those 125 targets, he had 0 drops, so a 0% drop rate. First wide receiver since 2000 to have 95 plus targets in a season and not drop a ball. And not only did he have 95 targets, he had 129 targets and did not drop a pass. And you might be saying, oh, Jakobi Meyers is a slot receiver, he had a bunch of short targets. Not the case. He was used much more often downfield last year, especially when Davante Adams left the team. And in those weeks without Adams, and specifically here on RotoViz, I'm looking at week 8 onward when Jakobi Meyers came back from his own injury, he played in 10 games. He averaged 15.7 fantasy points per game, very strong numbers overall, top 24 numbers, 9.3 targets per game were borderline top 12 numbers, and 75 receiving yards per game. That was as the wide receiver 1 on his team with no Adams, coming back from an injury, and while still competing with Brock Bowers, who was breaking out every week. And if you just take those numbers over those final 10 games of the year, that was top 15 wide receiver production with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as his quarterback, and now he gets an upgrade at QB. You have Geno Smith coming in, who when he has gotten protection in his career in terms of offensive line, he's been able to produce some great wide receivers. DK Metcalf, top 24 every single year. Depending on the season for Tyler Lockett, if he's healthy, a top 24 wide receiver. And this is Geno Smith just over the last few seasons, right, when he's kind of emerged. Now he gets to reconnect with his quarterback or his former coach in Pete Carroll in an offense that has been building around the offensive line in the run game, which should help Geno Smith. So that helps when we're looking at Jakobi Meyers, and so does the competition. Like, they did add Jack Bech, a second-round wide receiver who I actually think immediately should come in, assuming that he's just going to translate to the NFL nicely and be a starting number 2 receiver for this team. But of course, when you're talking about Ashton Jeanty being on the team and Brock Bowers at tight end and Jakobi Meyers, it's going to be a little bit more tougher competition than it seems when you're just talking about a wide receiver 2. But other than that, Trey Tucker proved he could not be a wide receiver 2. Fast wide receiver, 1 or 2 big plays here and there. Last year proved he could not be a consistent guy. They drafted Dante Thornton, who has like elite size and speed ability, could kind of be, I'm not going to say DK Metcalf, but in terms of Geno Smith having that big fast wide receiver, resembles DK in that way, but a later round pick, not somebody who's going to threaten Jakobi Meyers right away. Look, this is a Raiders offense that's changing a lot. Obviously, the quarterback for the offensive line, they went out there, they got Alex Kappa. They drafted as well in the 3rd round Caleb Rogers. This is an offense that loaded up their running back room, getting Raheem Mostert, who was probably better than anybody they had last year. Obviously drafting Ashton Jeanty, bringing in Jack Bech at the wide receiver position. Like, you have Pete Carroll here. They're basically saying they want to run the ball. Chip Kelly's trying to design a creative offense around Geno Smith. Jakobi Meyers is probably going to be a big piece of that. And I thought this tweet from P2W Fantasy kind of summed it up really well. Like, Jakobi Meyers, he's calling him a buy this year. Over the last 3 seasons, Jakobi Meyers, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 24, wide receiver 29. So a top 30 receiver in points per game each year. Despite that, look where he's currently going. I mean, this is just crazy. He's currently going as the wide receiver 39. Despite being on average a top 24 wide receiver the last 3 years, now having the best quarterback situation and the same exact competition basically as last year in just a better offensive environment, in my opinion. And despite that, he's going as a wide receiver 39. He's going in the 82nd pick overall. So you're talking about like a 7th or 8th round value for Jakobi Meyers. Every single year this happens. Jakobi Meyers looks like he should probably be taken in the 5th round. He falls to like the 7th, 8th, or 9th round, and it's happening again. Now, similar things could be said for Chris Godwin, who maybe I'm not like the 6th or 7th round for Godwin, but like that 5th round is usually where we see him going in, even though he continues to produce 2nd, 3rd, 4th round wide receiver numbers. Now, of course, Godwin last year gets injured, and before the injury, he was fantastic. Let's take a look. Look at what he was doing before the injury, according to Jarrett Rosas on Twitter right here. You can see Chris Godwin last year, through those first 7 weeks of the season, tied for 1st in touchdowns, tied for 1st in receptions with 50, 2nd in receiving yards, 1st in yards after the catch, 1st in first downs, had a 0% drop rate, tied for 1st with Jakobi Meyers, who we just talked about. I mean, this guy last year was the wide receiver 2 in fantasy for basically the first half of the season. Got hurt on like the final play of the game in week 7. That was not just like solid wide receiver numbers for your lineup. It was elite wide receiver 1 production. And if you look at it over a 17 game pace, it would have totaled 121 catches, 1,099 yards, and 12 touchdowns. But of course, the ankle injury took him out. But there are some positives here. The first one is that Chris Godwin is an aging wide receiver who is set to be a free agent. Despite that, the Bucs re-signed him before he hit the open market for a 3-year contract, $66 million according to SpotTrack on Twitter. $44 million of that was guaranteed. So basically, this comes out to a 2-year deal for $44 million. I think it's a good contract for the Bucs, but for them to go out there when there was other guys in the free agency market, of course, a wide receiver class where they just took a number 1 receiver in the 1st round. We'll talk about that in Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Them to put $60+ million potentially in Chris Godwin's pocket shows that they believe that the injury is not that bad. And if anybody has the proper medicals on this, it's the Bucs, the team he got hurt on in week 7 last year. And we're tracking his recovery basically day by day and including into the offseason. season. So yeah, I think they know how his health is looking. And earlier this year on the Pat McAfee show, their own GM basically said, we're expecting Chris Godwin to be ready for week 1 after they signed him, which makes sense, right? Like everything they're seeing as of right now, assuming no setbacks happen, he should be ready for week 1. And based on where he was last year in this offense, sure, offensive coordinator Liam Cohen is gone, but how he was producing, assuming he's just like 70 to 80% of that, you're getting him at a discount in drafts. And we'll talk about exactly where you're getting him, but as of right now, the only offseason moves for the Bucs, they added a right tackle in Charlie Heck. Other than that, NFL draft comes, they had 2 wide receivers, Tez Johnson in the 7th round. I mean, basically could have just been undrafted. They just took a flyer on him, right? And Emeka Egbuka, 1st round wide receiver. Emeka Egbuka, I think this is more of a future play. Now, I would not be shocked if Egbuka gets on the field in week 1 or just year 1 with some good production, but Jalen McMillan is there, right? We can talk about, let's look at this. If you just look at the competition here, Mike Evans gets the contract, Chris Godwin gets the contract, you have a 1st round pick in Egbuka. Jalen McMillan is going to be fighting with Egbuka. Assuming Egbuka can translate to the NFL, he kind of reminds me of like JSN's rookie year. JSN goes to Seattle with 2 proven veterans who are aging, and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Metcalf to some extent, mostly Lockett, and he was mostly a slot receiver, JSN. That's what's happening right now. Egbuka is mostly a slot receiver coming out of college, 2 aging or just older veterans in front of him in Mike Evans and Godwin. The way that I look at this, it took JSN, 2.5, 3 years or so to really break out in Seattle. Now he looks like the wide receiver 1 this year. Wouldn't be shocked if that's the same trajectory for Emeka Egbuka. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, 1 to 2 more years tops left of elite production that you're going to get out of those guys. Then Egbuka comes in maybe starting towards the end of this year, heading into next year. Of course, if either of them get injured, he immediately goes into the lineup. But to start the year, this is still Chris Godwin's job. They have 22 million reasons why per year to make it Chris Godwin's job. So when I see Godwin as of right now going as the 58th overall wide receiver, right around that Ted McMillan range, you're talking about like a 6th round wide receiver. I think this is way too late. He's going next to Rome Odunze and Jordan Addison and Chris Olave. Like he's just a tier above all these guys. I like Ted McMillan, so I would kind of rank him next to Chris Godwin, but give me both these guys, especially Godwin, over Jameson Williams for sure, over Zay Flowers for sure. I'll take him over Xavier Worthy. I'll probably take him over Devonta Smith, although that one's a little bit closer right now. Like, I just want all of those other guys over Godwin, and they go like a round above him right now. Now, just a reminder, I talked about it earlier, the Fantasy Blueprint is out right now. This is all of what you get. There's a lot here, so you can stop it if you want to. All the draft season tools, the in-season tools as well, from rankings, projections standpoint, waiver wire, all that. The Dynasty Toolkit all season long as well. You also get best ball rankings. You can get access to the Discord where you can ask me questions personally about your lineup, or getting like your lineup graded or your team graded, or like waivers and all that type of stuff. You can check it out. It's linked down below right now in the Fantasy Blueprint. Currently out. Thousands of people are using it. They're members. If you want to join, check it out. All right, the next wide receiver I want to talk about is DK Metcalf, and this is mostly because like I do think DK has league-winning upside every year because, I don't know, he's 6'3", 228 pounds, and he runs a 4.33 40 time. He's one of the cheat code wide receivers. I think there's very few in the NFL. I think we're looking at DK Metcalf and like AJ Brown as these 225-pound, 230-pound wide receivers who have elite speed and can just basically run by guys and use their size as leverage. It's rare. So yeah, I think DK every single year has league-winning upside, and last year he dealt with some injuries that really derailed him after having a hot like first 5-6 weeks of the season. He ends the season playing 15 games, 992 receiving yards as well. He's the wide receiver 30. Like, this wide receiver 30 is just so inaccurate though. Some of it's skewed by scoring just 5 touchdowns, but there was multiple times, 4 different times last year where he had his toe out of bounds or had a touchdown called back, and there was that stretch of like 3 to 4 games that he missed with an injury, and he just wasn't the same for like the next 6 weeks after that. But the dude just continues to earn cheat code targets. Since entering the NFL, he ranks top 3 in the league in cheat code targets, and that's including his rookie year, in years where Russell Wilson got hurt. Cheat code targets are your, as a wide receiver, deep targets of 20 plus yards and your red zone targets. And last year, DK, despite missing multiple games yet again, led the NFL in deep targets with 33 20 plus yards downfield. And now DK Metcalf is a Pittsburgh Steeler, where if you look at this offseason, the team trackers page in the Fantasy Blueprint, he was the only wide receiver added. They lost Mike Williams. They obviously traded away George Pickens to Dallas. Van Jefferson they did not re-sign, and they didn't add anybody in the draft at wide receiver. Just a 6th-round quarterback, Will Howard, who as of right now could be their quarterback, and Caleb Johnson, a 3rd-round running back. So here's what you're looking at. As of this recording, who knows? Maybe the expectation, it seems like Aaron Rodgers is going to sign. If that's the case, thumbs up for DK Metcalf. But even if he doesn't sign as of right now, just based on the competition, like just pure brute force, earning a 25 to 30% target share, DK Metcalf, where he's currently going in drafts, could pay off. The Steelers brass, it's been leaked that they're basically banking on Roman Wilson, their draft pick from last year, to come through. He was injured as a rookie. We'll see if that happens. But outside of that, you're looking at Calvin Austin, a short area guy who's kind of explosive, but not like a threat at all to take large target share. Scotty Miller bounces around as a downfield threat, and that's it. There's nobody else here. Like Robert Woods, I'm not concerned about at this stage in his career. DK Metcalf and like Pat Freiermuth are your only options. Jalen Warren out of the backfield. Metcalf might earn 140, 150 targets as it stands today. And hopefully by the time you're watching this, Aaron Rodgers has signed. If that's the case, perfect. But if not, Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, yeah, I don't love this, but I think that both of these guys, and like maybe even Will Howard, who showed some ability, especially to target guys downfield in college, but a 6th-round quarterback, so we have to temper our expectations coming to the league. But if it is Mason Rudolph, which I expect as of right now between those two, like, yeah, I think Rudolph can get 120, 130 targets to his guy. We saw multiple blow-up weeks in the past with like Calvin Ridley as recent as last year, so I don't love it, but I still think if there's no competition, DK is going to have to get the targets. And if DK Metcalf was like a 3rd-round pick like he was last year, or even a 4th-round pick, then sure, it's not even a question. But he's currently going in the same range as Ted McMillan and Chris Godwin. Wide receiver 27, 53rd overall. He's going as a 5th or a 6th-round pick in most drafts, which at that point, I'm fine, especially when he falls into the late 5th round. I'm fine taking him. I would rather wait another couple picks and get a Ted McMillan or a Chris Godwin, but assuming he's in that range and those guys are already gone, yeah, DK Metcalf, I'm for it as of right now. Now, this one's the interesting one because I will label Marvin Harrison, a top 5 overall pick in last year's NFL draft to the Arizona Cardinals. I will label him as a league winner, but let's just get this straight. Like, it's way too early to judge. We have to see what happens this offseason a little bit more. But as of right now, none of the competition changed, and he's heading into year 2. You could only would assume it gets better. Because as a rookie, the guy put up 885 receiving yards, 62 catches, earned 116 targets, stayed healthy. Like, if you look at this, in terms of rookie year production, ranking top 20 in the NFL in targets, averaging 6.8 per game, right? Top 20 in the league in targets. Normally, that's okay. But there were so many expectations. He was called a generational prospect, best wide receiver prospect in 20 years or so, right? He goes top 5 overall. You're expecting him immediately to pay off 1st-round draft capital because he went there often last year in fantasy drafts. But he didn't end up paying that off for a lot of reasons. He himself didn't look good. He was also miscasted, and Kyler Murray just never got on the same page as him in year 1. You could see this tweet here from Andrew Cooper on Twitter. Marvin Harrison was winning a lot on routes per Roto Underworld. He was top 10. This is Roto Underworld Player Profiler. Top 10 in total routes versus man coverage and top 3 in win rate versus man. So what does that mean? It just kind of means that he was getting open, but he was getting open downfield. Those were hard throws for Kyler Murray. They were never really aligned. For some reason, Marvin Harrison was being used as like this downfield weapon for most of his rookie year. Hopefully that changes in year 2 and he could be used more as a route runner like he was in college. And now heading into year 2, Harrison gets a full offseason to build with Kyler Murray, no real wide receiver competition added, and the same offensive coordinator who can hopefully adjust the scheme in year 2. So compared to the other guys in this video, I'm not as high on Marvin Harrison. That's why I saved him for last, mostly because of where he goes. Wide receiver 17 overall. He's going right now as like a late 3rd, early 4th round pick. In the 4th round, I can start to get talked into it, especially if he keeps falling this offseason. The only problem is there's some interesting running backs there, and there's guys like Mike Evans, Devontae Adams who go in that range, Rashee Rice, especially somebody that we've already talked about this offseason could break fantasy, a guy that I'm targeting. So it is a tough range. You have Garrett Wilson here, but like compared to guys like Tyreek Hill, I'll take my chances on Marvin Harrison. Terry McLaurin, I'll take my chances on Marvin Harrison at that point. So that's where I just see, like, as long as they can get his role adjusted in this offense, we saw glimpses of it last year when they moved him around in the slot, let him run intermediate and short routes, not just deep. It did look good. So these are 6 wide receivers who can absolutely help you win leagues this year because they just check all the boxes. They have the upside, they have the opportunity, and there's a lot of value right now based on where they're going in drafts. None of them are being valued at their ceiling or anywhere near it right now, and some of them are even going overlooked. Now, if you want to see the running back version of this video, it's out right now. You can check it out right here to see the running backs who can help you win leagues in 2025.